The moment hit without warning. A crash, a scream, glass shattering across the floor like ice raining from a frozen sky. The smell of fries and neon hung in the air 1 second, and the next, it was chaos incarnate. Metal clanged, wood splintered, and every heartbeat screamed danger. Evan Cole had never considered himself a hero. His life was a quiet blur of late-night warehouse shifts, empty apartments, and uncelebrated endurance. He was the kind of guy teachers called capable but distracted. The kind of guy who avoided confrontation because life had taught him that even small mistakes were expensive. Tonight, like every other night, he found refuge in Marcy's diner, a cheap neon-lit corner where the coffee was bitter but warm. Across from him sat Lily, a girl with kind eyes and the sort of exhaustion that made even strangers feel protective. Evan had seen her come here before, always alone, always quietly observing the world as if she had a secret no one could touch. He noticed her glancing toward the window every few minutes, a subtle tension in her posture that made Evan uneasy. He didn't know why. Maybe he was projecting. Maybe he was just tired. And then it happened. The front window exploded inward, shards of glass spinning like deadly snow. Wood splintered. A deafening roar filled the diner, and panic erupted instantly. Patrons screamed, throwing chairs aside. The world became a tornado of pain, fear, and confusion. Evan's instincts, those quiet, ignored impulses, took over. He lunged across the diner, pulling Lily down and covering her with his body. Pain blossomed immediately. Glass cut into his back. Wood slammed into his shoulder. He struck the floor hard, stars exploding behind his eyes. Yet he held on. Heart hammering, muscles screaming, adrenaline pouring through him like fire. Evan became a shield, a human wall between danger and someone else's life. Minutes, or maybe seconds, passed in a blur. When the dust finally began to settle, the diner was almost unrecognizable. Broken booths scattered food, shattered glass. Sirens wailed in the distance. Evan felt fire shoot through his side. Blood soaked his hoodie. Yet when he saw Lily sitting upright beneath him, shaken but alive, a quiet resolve settled within him. And then the doors opened. Leather, steel, and power filled the room. Lily's father. His presence alone made the air heavy, suffocating in its intensity. He didn't yell. He didn't demand explanation. He scanned the chaos, his eyes sharp, calculating, and for a moment, Evan felt smaller than he ever had. Recognition came slowly, measured. Witnesses described the act. Security footage confirmed it. Evan had done exactly what was needed, selfless, instantaneous, and courageous. He hadn't known who Lily was. He hadn't known her father's influence. He hadn't cared. This was the moment when ordinary became extraordinary. Across town, in a different diner, Leo Martinez was facing a similar heartbeat. A gray sedan had crept past Old Joe's Burger joint 3 times, each pass setting off instinctive alarms in his mind. A gun emerged from the passenger window, black and cold, aimed directly at Mia Chun. Survival instincts kicked in. Leo didn't think. He moved. In 3 strides, he collided with Mia, covering her with his body just as the first bullets tore through the air. Pain exploded across him, burning, crippling, shocking. But he stayed. Every nerve, every thought, every heartbeat focused on one thing: keeping her alive. Chaos around him became a blur. Glass, wood, fire alarms, screaming. It all faded into the background as he locked onto the mission. Mia's gray eyes, wide with terror, met his. Recognition, confusion, gratitude. He didn't have time to consider it. He only had time to act. The moment stretched. Every second counted. And Leo, invisible to the world until now, became unshakably real. Outside, motorcycles roared like a swarm of hornets, surrounding the diner. The Phantom King's MC, a wall of loyalty and muscle, converged to protect their own. Yet inside, Leo remained the hero, bleeding, trembling, holding on to life as chaos and death spun around him. By the time sirens arrived, both Evan and Leo had already changed the lives of the girls they saved, and in turn, the trajectory of their own lives. Evan Cole had learned early that life rarely rewarded quiet endurance. At 22, he spent his nights stacking boxes in a warehouse and his days wondering whether any of it mattered. The kind of kid who went unnoticed in school and stayed unnoticed in adulthood. Teachers called him capable but inconsistent. Managers tolerated him. Friends, few and fleeting, came and went like clouds across a gray sky. His apartment was small and bare. A single-bedroom place that smelled faintly of old carpet and forgotten takeout boxes. He didn't need much. Warmth, food, a place to lie down, and a quiet corner in Marcy's diner where the neon buzzed and the coffee was black enough to burn away the edges of the day. That diner had become a habit, a fragile routine in an unpredictable world. It was cheap, quiet, and predictable, the three things Evan craved most. And then there was Lily. He hadn't known her for long. Just a few weeks of shared space in the same diner, separated by a table but drawn together by something unspoken. She carried exhaustion like a cloak, but her eyes hinted at resilience, something stubbornly gentle. She wasn't just another stranger to Evan. She was a reminder that small acts of courage, kindness, or even simply noticing another human being could exist in a world otherwise harsh and indifferent. Meanwhile, across town, Leo Martinez lived a life shaped by shadows. He wasn't invisible by choice. He had become invisible out of necessity. 16 years of ducking bullies, dodging dangers, and slipping through the cracks had taught him survival was an art. Every day was a calculation. Which hallway to avoid, which voice to ignore, which glance could cost him a beating. The streets of Riverside High were unforgiving, a microcosm of the city he called home, a place where gunshots were more common than sirens, and loyalty was measured in scars. At home, Leo carried more responsibility than most teenagers could imagine. A small apartment, shared with his grandmother, who coughed through the nights and depended on him for more than he should have been expected to give. Medical bills stacked like bricks on the kitchen counter. Heat shut off in winter. Eviction notices scattered like autumn leaves. He learned early to hold himself small, to make himself nearly invisible so the world's weight didn't crush him entirely. Mia Chun, the girl he would one day save, seemed to exist in an entirely different world. A scholarship student, private schools, ballet lessons, a life curated to shield her from the violent chaos of her father's legacy. The Phantom King's MC. Her life had been carefully constructed. A thin wall built to protect her from the sins of her father, Rocco, the Rock Valentino. But walls crack, and shadows seep through, even the strongest ones. 3 weeks ago, that wall had been breached when enemies attacked the MC, leaving her exposed to danger she'd spent her whole life learning to avoid. Both Evan and Leo lived lives defined by struggle, but in vastly different ways. Evan's was quiet, internal, the steady erosion of confidence and hope. Leo's was immediate, violent, and literal, every day a lesson in survival. Both had become experts at moving through the world without being noticed, at blending in, at keeping their heads down. And yet, both were about to be tested in ways that would define them forever. For Evan, it would be a random night at a diner. A sudden explosion of chaos that demanded action before he had a moment to think. For Leo, it would be a gray sedan, creeping past Old Joe's burger joint, a gun emerging, and a life in immediate danger that required a split-second decision. Both boys had learned, through necessity or circumstance, that the world rarely gave second chances. But neither had anticipated that the most critical moment of their lives would demand courage they didn't know the. It wasn't bravery as a concept. It wasn't a heroic fantasy. It was instinct honed by quiet endurance, by survival, by the repeated knowledge that one small decision could mean the difference between life and death, for themselves or for someone else. For Lily and Mia, their lives would be defined by the boys who stepped forward when it mattered most. For Evan and Leo, the world would never be the same. Not because they sought recognition, but because in a single heartbeat, they had proven something profound. That ordinary people are capable of extraordinary acts when everything else fails. And as the diners emptied of ordinary noise, as neon lights flickered over broken tables and spilled coffee, a quiet tension hung in the air. Something was coming. something that would force decisions faster than thought. The calm before the storm was over. The diner had gone quiet in the fraction of a second between normalcy and chaos, a pause that seemed to stretch long enough to feel infinite. Evan's heart was hammering in his chest, a physical drumbeat that drowned out everything else. Across from him, Lily's eyes were wide, frozen in terror, tracking the shards of glass that still fell like slow rain. Outside, the night had grown darker, the streetlights casting long, trembling shadows. From somewhere beyond the broken windows, a vehicle's engine growled. The threat was invisible, faceless, but the instinctual warning in Evan's mind screamed louder than any siren. Danger is here, now, and it will not wait. He gritted his teeth, pressing himself harder against Lily, feeling the jagged edges of glass dig into his back. Pain exploded along his shoulder, but he ignored it. Every second mattered. Every fraction of a heartbeat could mean survival or death. For Leo, the tension had been building in a different diner, a different city, but the stakes were identical. The gray sedan had returned for the third time, crawling past old Joe's burger joint like a predator circling its prey. Leo's gut tightened. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He glanced at Mia. She was oblivious, absorbed in her homework, unaware that her life had become a target. The world outside was quiet for now, but his instincts screamed otherwise. The barrel of a gun emerged suddenly from the passenger window, a black, cold, inhuman threat. Time slowed, heartbeats stretched. Leo moved before he could think. There was no decision, only action. 3 strides, 1 tackle, and he collided with Mia, covering her with his body as bullets tore the air. Pain exploded across his back and ribs. Shrapnel, flying glass, and the sting of gunfire claimed his muscles and blurred his vision. But Mia was alive. That was all that mattered. Back with Evan, the chaos had only intensified. A group of figures, leather jackets glinting under the neon, emerged through the shattered doors. Lily's father, a man whose presence demanded both respect and fear, scanned the room. Every patron froze, unsure whether he was friend or threat. Yet Evan, bloodied and trembling, remained focused. His mission was clear. Keep Lily safe, survive, and hope he was enough. The diner itself had become a battlefield. Tables toppled, food scattered, the sharp scent of burnt grease mixing with the acrid tang of fear. People scrambled toward the exits, screaming, shouting, tripping over debris. And yet, Evan and Leo were islands in the storm, calm only in their singular purpose. For both boys, the threats were immediate and unrelenting. Evan felt shards of glass pierce his hoodie, a wooden chair leg smash into his shoulder, but he did not flinch. Leo, meanwhile, took bullets into his back, pain sharp and unyielding, but refused to release the girl beneath him. Time became a series of moments, each one stretching to infinity. Move, protect, survive. The world narrowed to 2 points. The person in front of them, and the chaos threatening to destroy everything. No one else mattered. Friends, strangers, rules, laws, they dissolved into irrelevance. Only life, only protection, and then sound. Sirens approaching in the distance, engines rumbling like a mechanical storm. Evan could hear them, could feel the vibrations in the floor beneath his feet. Outside, the night had become alive with urgency. Leo heard them too, but closer, faster, the Phantom Kings assembling with precision and discipline. Every motorcycle a wall, every rider an extension of lethal loyalty. Inside the diners, time slowed. Every heartbeat, every inhale, every split-second decision counted. One wrong move could mean everything. For Evan, a steel-gray gaze measured him. The father, the authority figure, the man who could destroy him with a glance. But beneath it, something else lingered. Recognition, respect, approval, validation. For Leo, the first responders were the MC brothers, Bull, Reaper, the men who could kill or save with equal efficiency. Their eyes scanned him as they worked, assessing his worth not in dollars or influence, but in courage. And they saw it. Pure, instinctive heroism that didn't ask for a reward, didn't weigh risk, didn't even hesitate. Pain pulsed through both boys like fire, yet the moment demanded more. Every detail mattered. Evan's hand shifted slightly, ensuring Lily's head remained protected. Leo's breath caught in his throat as he felt another impact of shrapnel, another eruption of chaos, but he did not falter. Around them, the world continued its symphony of destruction. Alarms blaring, glass crunching, shouting, footsteps running, motorcycles revving, sirens wailing. And yet, at the center of it all, these two ordinary boys became extraordinary. Time, space, fear, they were irrelevant. Only action mattered. Only the heartbeat of another person, fragile and precious, demanded everything they had to give. The rising tension had reached its peak. The next moment would decide everything. Survival, life, death, honor, recognition. Every consequence waited just beyond the next second. The diner had become a battlefield, a place where ordinary life collided violently with unimaginable danger. Glass rained from above like frozen daggers. The air smelled of burned grease, gunpowder, and fear. Every sound, screams, shattering plates, footsteps, was amplified into chaos. Evan's back burned where shards of glass and splintered wood had cut into him. Pain throbbed through every nerve, but he didn't let go. Lily's head was pressed against his chest. Her arms clung to him as if he were the only solid thing in the room. Her wide, terrified eyes searched his face. I can't, she stammered. But Evan shook his head, whispering, "Stay down. Just stay down." Outside, the first engines roared. Leather and chrome became a protective wall. Lily's father arrived with his men. The authority, the fear, the power Evan had not known existed until now. But Evan was already in motion. He had no choice. Every instinct, every split second of his life's unnoticed endurance, funneled into this single act: protect her at all costs. Across town, Leo's situation mirrored this chaos. Bullets tore through the air, shrapnel flew like rain. His shoulder screamed in pain from the first shot. His ribs ignited from another. But Mia's life was all that existed. Every breath, every movement, every ounce of strength was devoted to shielding her. He twisted his body instinctively so that he took every hit himself. Pain spiked in waves, like fire blooming under his skin. But the girl remained untouched. The world slowed around him. He felt each bullet pass, each splinter slice. The diner itself seemed to scream, bending and twisting around their struggle. Time stretched to the edge of sanity. And yet, Leo didn't falter. He held her as if his life itself depended on it, because it did. Evan could hear the commands outside. Men with experience, authority, and lethal precision moved to secure the perimeter. They didn't need to shout. Their presence was a statement. No one gets to touch her. Evan's vision was blurred with blood and pain, but his focus never wavered. Each heartbeat matched the chaotic rhythm of destruction around him. Somewhere in the distance, the ambulance sirens began to wail, but inside, it was a microcosm of war. Chairs were overturned, plates shattered, screams echoed in a nightmarish chorus. And yet, at the center of it, Evan remained a human shield. Leo did the same, and the girls they protected, Lily and Mia, were alive because someone ordinary had chosen extraordinary action. The gunfire slowed. The gray sedan, the source of terror, had vanished, leaving the aftermath in its wake. Shattered windows, bloodied floors, the taste of fear still thick in the air. Evan tried to move, felt the fire in his side, the sting in his back, but Lily's hand held him down. "You're hurt," she whispered. He shook his head, forcing a grim smile. "I've got you. That's all that matters." Leo, chest heaving, ears ringing, vision hazy, looked down at Mia. Her hands clutched his shirt, her gray eyes wide but alive. Recognition, gratitude, fear still lingering but alive. The same instinct that had pushed him forward now whispered softly, "You did it. You survived." She survived. Then the motorcycles arrived, a tidal wave of engines and leather. They formed a protective wall around Old Joe's. Every rider scanning, every engine vibrating through the concrete floor, every hand resting on weapons, ready to enforce the law of loyalty and family. Bull and Reaper, two men who were extensions of lethal expertise, moved toward them, and Leo let them assess him quickly. One look told them everything. Courage, instinct, heroism. No hesitation, no thought of reward, only action. Evan watched as Lily's father approached him. Steel-gray eyes measured him from a distance. He wasn't angry. He wasn't confused. He was calculating, assessing, and in that assessment, Evan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Respect, gratitude, recognition, and without words, he understood. He had survived not only the danger, but the judgment of someone who could have destroyed him instantly. For both boys, the climax had passed. The moments of life or death instinctive action, the bullets, the chaos, the fear, had defined them. They were no longer ordinary. They were living proof that heroism doesn't need training, accolades, or recognition. It only needs courage and split-second action. Both girls, Lily and Mia, clutched the boys in the aftermath, trembling, terrified, alive. And in that shared heartbeat, the calm after the storm, the world had shifted irreversibly. Lives had been saved. Pain had been endured. Futures had been altered. The scene was chaotic, but order was returning. EMS arrived for both boys, stabilizing wounds, applying pressure, taking them to safety. The fathers, one aware, one revealed later, ensured protection, while the boys rested, battered but unbroken. Each would carry the memory of the moment, the physical scars, and the knowledge that in that instant, they had been heroes. And the lesson lingered in the air. Sometimes, courage doesn't roar. Sometimes, it's quiet, invisible, unnoticed, until the moment comes, and it decides for you. The ambulance sirens faded into the night as Evan lay on the gurney, his body bruised, bloodied, and aching in ways that words couldn't describe. Every muscle throbbed, his hoodie soaked with blood, his back and sides stinging from shards of glass and splintered wood. Yet, despite the pain, he felt a strange sense of calm. Lily was safe, alive, and trembling beside him. That knowledge alone made the agony feel almost bearable. In the quiet of the hospital room, Lily pressed her hands gently against his, tears streaming down her face. You saved me," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." Evan tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "You don't have to," he murmured. "Just live your life. That's enough." Outside, in another city, Leo lay on the hospital bed, his chest wrapped in bandages, the paramedic's words echoing in his head. "You're lucky to be alive." Mia sat beside him, gripping his hand like a lifeline. Her gray eyes shimmered with tears, but there was relief, awe, and a glimmer of something else. A deep recognition. She had spent her life training for danger, yet no drills could have prepared her for the courage of a stranger willing to throw himself into bullets without hesitation. Both boys had discovered something profound. Heroism wasn't about fame, awards, or recognition. It was about action when the moment demanded it. It was about stepping forward, even when fear screamed to stay hidden. And now, the world had acknowledged them in its own quiet ways. For Evan, gratitude came in subtle forms. Lily's father, the man who could have leveled the diner with a glance, approached him with measured respect. There was no intimidation, no obligation, only acknowledgement. "You protected her," the man said, his voice steady, yet heavy with unspoken weight. "That was the right choice. Don't forget it." In that moment, Evan realized he was seen. Not as a background character in life, not as the kid who drifted unnoticed, but as someone capable of decisive, life-altering action. Leo, too, received recognition, though in a world of leather and chrome. Bull and Reaper, the Phantom King's most trusted enforcers, nodded as they observed his injuries. There were no flashy awards, no congratulations. Only respect, a currency earned in moments of courage and danger. Mia pressed the words into his ears, barely above a whisper. "You saved my life. You're my hero." For a kid who had spent years being invisible, that recognition carried more weight than any trophy or accolade ever could. Both girls, Lily and Mia, carried the quiet burden of gratitude alongside the stark reality of survival. They knew that their lives had been protected not by destiny, not by luck, but by the instincts and courage of ordinary people who had chosen to act when it mattered most. And that knowledge became a bridge between them and the boys who had saved them. A bond forged in blood, chaos, and unspoken respect. Months passed, but the moments of that night lingered in memory. Evan returned to his night shifts, but with renewed purpose. He enrolled in night classes, slowly building skills that gave him hope for the future. Lily and he remained connected. Their shared experience, a silent thread linking them across everyday life. Leo, too, found a quiet transformation. His family circumstances hadn't changed overnight, but his confidence had. He knew now that he had the courage to step forward, that his instincts and bravery mattered. Mia continued her cautious life, but the memory of the boy who risked everything became a light she could carry into each uncertain day. The Phantom Kings and Lily's father maintained their protective presence, ensuring that debts were honored and dangers mitigated. But the real change didn't come from external power, it came from the ripple effect of courage. One split-second act had altered multiple lives, proving that even ordinary people could influence outcomes in ways they never imagined. And so, the lesson was clear. Heroism doesn't wear a uniform. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet decision to step forward when fear commands you to run. It's the invisible shield thrown across a stranger. It's the instinct to act before the world has a chance to catch up. If you, watching this story unfold, feel a spark of inspiration, remember, moments of courage exist in all of us. They only need a heartbeat, a choice, a willingness to act. Like Evan and Leo, you don't need fame, power, or preparation. You just need the courage to step forward when it matters most. So, in honor of the courage that changed lives that night, pause for a moment. Think of someone you can protect, someone you can help, someone who needs a shield. Even if it's only your time, your voice, your presence. The world might not notice immediately, but the ripple of heroism lasts forever. And before this story ends, leave a mark. Comment below with the words, "I choose courage," and carry the lesson forward. Because in the end, Evan and Leo didn't seek glory. They didn't expect recognition. They simply did what needed to be done. And that was enough to change lives, save futures, and remind the world that heroism often wears the face of ordinary people.